Namaskar, good evening. You're watching Nation Wants to Know and I'm Swati Joshi. Bharat's braves under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi through Operation Sindoor have successfully dismantled multiple terror dens and networks operating on the Pakistani soil. The operation's success underscores India's commitment to safeguarding its sovereignty and combating state-sponsored terrorism emanating from Pakistan. But just days after India's lesson on terror funding, nefarious rogue state is back to its terror patronage. Terroristan seems to be working on a new plan to rebuild the ruins in Bahawalpur and Muridke. Remember, both these hubs are linked to Saeed's Lashkar headquarters and Masood's Jaish den. Reports have surfaced alleging that Pakistan is using IMF bailout funds to rebuild terrorist infrastructure. BJP leaders have now taken to social media to allege that the Pak government is set to pay martyrs package in a bid to help rebuild Lashkar and Jaish terror assets on its soil. And this includes offering 1 crore rupees to the families of those killed. This move could result in Masood Azhar receiving almost 14 crore rupees for his deceased relatives. The timing of Pakistan's compensation announcement raises questions. Let's take a look at the charges that have been leveled by the BJP netas. Is this how Pakistan is using the money that it got from IMF? We'll put out the details here on the big screen. To reconstruct Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed terror dens, 1 crore package compensation for terrorists who were killed in the precision strikes. And if we are going by the information coming in of 1 crore to the family of the deceased or the individuals who've been killed in the precision strike, then Masood Azhar is all set to get 14 crore rupees, 14 crore Pakistani rupees. Amit Malviya has put out these details on social media. Not just that, let's in fact break down the details of what's transpiring. Let's connect the dots of how Pakistan is using global funding to ensure its terror factory is that was decimated by Indian forces once again flourishes. And isn't that what Pakistan does every single time? Not just provides a safe haven, but also ensures that funds to these terror organizations is unhindered and that allows them to flourish on the Pakistani soil. Let's take a look at what's transpiring here. May 7th, 2025, Operation Sindoor. What happened? The Jaish-e-Mohammed headquarters was demolished by India in the precision strike. That strike killed Masood Azhar's relative. Masood clan was killed in the strike. What happened just after that, right after India's retaliation? On the 9th of May 2025, IMF approved loan to Pakistan. $1 billion was disbursed to Terroristan by the IMF. And on the 13th of May 2025, Pak announced martyrs package to all those who were killed in those precision strikes. So is Masood Azhar going to now gain from the money that has come in from IMF? If you connect the dots, that's the answer perhaps that you will get. That's the money that is going to be given to the terrorist Masood Azhar and many like him. If that wasn't proof enough, Pakistan has now resorted to a new stunt attempting to fool its own people into believing that it has had some sort of a victory. Look at the visuals on your screens. This is the rally that Pakistan has organized to celebrate its doom. And no surprises, proscribed terror groups came together in this rally in Karachi to support the Pakistani army. Reports suggest Lashkar and ASWJ held a rally in Karachi in support of the Pakistani army. Let's open up the debate. Let's go across to our guests. We're joined by Lieutenant General Shankar Prasad. We have Professor Madhav Nalapa, geopolitical analyst, Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador, joining us on the broadcast, and also Major General Sanjay Maston. Let me in fact first go across to Mr. Dayal. Mr. Dayal, India has taken action, India has retaliated. But is this not the responsibility of the world to ensure that nations like Pakistan that provide a safe haven to terrorists, that ensure funding to these terror organizations happens, that money flows in, and such nations should be acted against? Is this not the responsibility of the world and organizations like the IMF?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. Of course, it is the responsibility of all countries of the world to combat terror. And since terror emanates so often from Pakistan and directs itself against various countries, terror based in Pakistan and the outfits which carry terrorist activities have to be taken action against. However, the world remains oblivious. And there are various reasons for that. For instance, the United States. The United States has for long thought that Pakistan's terrorist activities are directed against India. And India may therefore feel the need for high quality weapons and would perhaps buy some of these from the United States. India is the world's biggest importer of weapons, and the United States is the world's biggest exporter. The United States sees India as a very big market. And if Pakistan creates problems for India, so what? That is their attitude. Now, terror from Pakistan has hurt the United States itself. No one can forget that Osama bin Laden was given accommodation for over 5 years in Abbottabad, less than a mile away from the military academy. Nobody can forget the direct connection between Pakistan-based terrorists and the London tube attack. There are so many other instances, but nonetheless, there is no doubt that the world has largely ignored Pakistan's terror connection. Now, India has been steadfast in pointing out that terror from Pakistan hurts us and it hurts other countries. And that is why at the recent IMF meeting, where Pakistan's request for the loan was considered, we pointed out that all the money that IMF has been giving to Pakistan is misused.
Absolutely.
Pakistan has received 25 loans from the IMF. And all these are considerable. Where is the money gone? Why is the country in such shambles? What is the state of the Pakistani economy? Is the IMF not aware of that? Where does this money go? Everybody knows that it goes to finance terror.
Absolutely.
Now, Pakistan is not a democracy. There is an elected government, but that's just a sham. Pakistan is run by the deep state, and the deep state consists of the army and the ISI. They have a vested interest in funding the terror outfits because they use them against India. So this money, which is intended for the development of Pakistan and which the IMF so generously gives, goes towards funding of terror. And that is the unfortunate reality.
Absolutely.
We pointed it out.
Anybody who believes that this terror emanating from Pakistan is only hurting India and no one else is living in fool's paradise, Professor Nalapat, what does not have to be a nuclear scientist to put things together to understand how Pakistan, a broke nation with its economy in shambles, gets fresh money, new money from IMF and then makes these big announcements, 1 crore to be given to those killed. And look at how this is going to end up benefiting Masood Azhar.
Well, Swati, I'd like to point out that just before 9/11 happened, during the George W. Bush regime, a delegation of Taliban was invited to Washington to meet with the presidential team, and I'm sure they had discussions with the presidential team. I have no idea what those discussions were, but shortly thereafter, totally, to the shock of the Americans, you had that horrible incident of 9/11. You're talking about Osama bin Laden. This is Osama bin Laden's signature achievement. So the fact is, in my prediction, and I'm sorry to say, I may be belittled at first, but usually it's proved right, is that this is going to be, Pakistan is going to be another Afghanistan. The military in Pakistan is going to be what Taliban was during that period, not the new Taliban, but the old Taliban, which was currently brought to power by Bill Clinton in 1996 in Afghanistan and repaid America in 2001 with that strike. I was very close to the World Trade Center with my wife in the Lexington Hotel when that happened, and we can see the shock of that. The point is very simple. It's only a matter of time before a terror module from Pakistan, or possibly in operation in the U.S. also, but they have got modules active in the U.S. among certain sections of the U.S. population. And these modules will spring into action and have an unpleasant surprise ready for the Americans. So I want to say the American policy is totally short-sighted. American policy and Donald Trump is going to go the way of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton facilitated the Taliban. Bill Clinton was totally on the side of Pakistan on Kashmir. I mean, the reasons why Trump is going the way of Bill Clinton, and none of those reasons are good where U.S. security is concerned. So, Swati, let me tell you that what Trump is doing is basically what Clinton did. Store up trouble, which is going to strike the U.S. homeland someday, sooner or later, possibly much sooner than anyone thinks, Swati.
Absolutely. You know, I want to bring in Lieutenant General Prasad as well. Lieutenant General Prasad, West is very clever in that sense, isn't it? When it comes to India, Pakistan or this region, they act as if this is our problem, this is none of their business. But when America is affected, impacted, and we saw how they took down Osama bin Laden, America does not think twice when it has to protect its citizens, when it has to safeguard its sovereignty and national integrity. But when it comes to this part of the world, they feel no remorse or hesitation in hyphenating India and Pakistan.
You're absolutely correct. And the two previous speakers, whatever they've said, I completely endorse. In fact, I take out some points from them. Firstly, I want to make a point to say that this is the right time for India to advertise as much as possible with evidence to say where this money is actually going in Pakistan. 14 crores going, as you say, must be advertised to the world and shown, if possible, as to how this is being spent by terrorists and rebuilding of terrorist camps and what the Prime Minister calls terrorist universities, both at Bhagalpur as well as Mudir Khe. That's one part we have to keep telling the world. The very interesting thing that Ambassador Dayal said was that the Americans want this to continue so that India continues to import equipment from outside and the Americans and the other big arms manufacturing people supply weapons to India, so the trade of weapons continues in their favor. The answer to this is that very soon, and I think we are already on that path, to be indigenously satisfied, indigenously completely, as we call Atmanirbhar. Bulk of the equipment, military equipment, which we need in the current situation, is now already started manufacturing in India. The day we are reasonably self-sufficient, the day we make our own missiles, our own equipments like the radars and all the early warning elements and the anti-aircraft guns, etc., the sooner it will be stopping. People think that if these two countries can continue to be put at war, like the way they have done at the moment, they will continue to support, and I completely see the point that Ambassador was making, that the one way, and the answer is this. The second important point, which I do hope sincerely that the world powers will understand, that India is not only fighting terrorism for itself, India is fighting terrorism on behalf of the entire world.
Absolutely.
If you notice, most incidents of terrorism that has taken place in the past decade or 2 decades have all had background to Pakistan. And that's the only country which has universities which train terrorists. That is the only army in the world. In no other conventional army has an armed corps. You see, regular armies have an armored corps, an infantry and an air artillery, etc. Pakistan has got a terrorist army. The most potent element of Pakistan army is Jaish-e-Mohammed, something like equivalent to our artillery, and Lashkar-e-Toiba equivalent to our armored corps. So these are the principal weapons that the Pakistan military has got, which is not.
And that's why, sir, you had the Pakistani officials, military officials, take part in the funeral processions of these terrorists and saluting them, paying them tributes. Major General Meston, you know, killing the terrorists, of course, is the immediate response. But if we want to completely demolish the infrastructure, you need to choke them financially, because if they do not have money, they will not be able to rebuild their infrastructure, recruit people based on whatever promises they are making to them. So you have to choke them financially. And India cannot do it alone.
Very true, Swati. I think you have hit the nail on the head. We have to choke their funding. Firstly, it is India's attempt to do that. And of course, the entire world has to do that. So how are they getting funding is very, very clear. They are getting funding from two sources. That is, one is direct funding and one is indirect funding. Now, direct funding is basically from most of the countries who were allied with them, you know, earlier Saudi Arabia, and most of these Middle East countries, and why they used to give it. I came to know when I was in Afghanistan, because most of the people in that part of the country, they would feel that when they are doing their daily wrongs, so the guilt will be there, and because of that guilt, they felt that to please God, they have to give money for jihad. And they knew the fountainhead of jihad is in Pakistan, so they used to give direct money. Many people in Saudi Arabia and these countries used to give money to these people. Second is the US aid has had a very, very important role in this direction. If you recollect, US aid, President Trump has not, of course, disbanded, but just few years back, the LET cover-up, that humanitarian group, that Falah-e-Insaniyat Foundation, it was being totally funded by the US aid. So that is another way they were getting funded. Next is the Americans always dance to the Pakistan tune. Now, Pakistan is one of the most manipulative nations, and I will substantiate how. They give the impression to Americans, the impression only, that they are fighting counter-terrorism, and therefore they demonstrate that, but very selectively and very strategically. And what is that? They hand over some terrorist. They had handed over Mullah, this brother, way back in 2001 to America. Recently, they handed over this, I think, Saifullah, who was associated in this 2021, this Kabul bombings when the Americans were leaving. So they give a lot of money to the to Pakistan. And this is also funding. So this is a reward. So Pakistan is harboring, training terrorists. All terrorist activities, any attacks in the world, whether it is Bali bombing, World Trade Center, anything, has emanated from Pakistan, training, etc. Yet the West seems oblivious to the fact that nothing is happening, and they are towing their line. Same Americans. I was in Afghanistan. I must tell you, the Pakistanis had cut off the logistic routes for more than 6 months, if you recollect, and they were dependent on the northern routes from Russia and all these countries through Central Asian republics. Yet I wonder why. I always wonder why is Americans, aiding Pakistan, and they will suffer, as brought out by the earlier speakers and Professor Narpati stated. America is going to invite trouble.
I just have something to add to that. I want to go across to Mr. Dayal. It is, very surprising that the Pakistanis for so long have been able to fool and bluff the American intelligence and surveillance in case they are attempting to do that. But I also believe that America has its own vested interest, Mr. Dayal. In this part of the world, America is also looking for some sort of a dominance. It wants to counter China, does not want China to completely, in a sense, take Pakistan in its control. And Pakistan is just another lab for America. Would you agree or reject that argument?
No, Pakistan has served American interests at all times. Pakistan has been consistent in finding for itself some utility for the Americans, whether it was in the context of the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan or the fight against the Taliban regime. The Pakistanis have somehow sold themselves. They are masters at that. You refer to them as Terroristan, but they are equally Jhutistan. They are Fakistan. They present themselves as something which they are not. And where the Americans are concerned, as I said earlier, and which has been agreed to by some of the other panelists, the Americans have an interest in keeping alive Pakistan's potential for hostility towards India, because that makes India need American weapons. Of course, General Rai rightly pointed out that we are increasingly moving towards indigenization. But right now the situation is we do need weapons from other sources, and the Americans have a great interest in selling these to us. Pakistan is not in a position to buy American weaponry, but it is in a position to keep alive hostility towards India, which it does through the terrorist camps and the terrorist organizations. Now, let me mention, everybody knows that the civilian government in Pakistan counts for nothing. There is no secret. When Marco Rubio called up Pakistan, he spoke to Asim Munir. He didn't speak to the civilian government. He knows who calls the shots.
Right.
And the army and the ISI are the deep state. They control policy. It's clear as crystal that the army wants hostility with India. And since it avoids a direct confrontation. It uses the terrorists. And I was posted in Pakistan 4 decades ago, in the early 80s. I remember what the Pakistani generals used to say, that we will bleed India by 1,000 cuts.
Absolutely.
That has continued to be their policy. There has been no change. We know it. The Americans know it. Everybody knows it. We are the only ones who are taking action, but believe me, we are capable of doing it by
and we've
ourselves.
shown that to the world. But what I want to understand from Professor Nalapat, and you know, and in this particular time, in these times, one understands that yes, you know, diplomacy is all right, and having great relations with America or any other country, calling them your their friends who would rather come to your help. That's all fine, and that's a separate issue to be dealt with at some other time maybe. Right now, what you find increasingly interesting is that when you are hit with a situation like this, you are on your own. You're almost on your own because other nations are not calling out Pakistan the way they should. So this is your fight, this is your battle. Like I said, diplomacy is fine. That can be discussed some other time.
Look, Swati, the only solution to this problem is to ensure, I mean, through political and diplomatic means, I'm not suggesting anything else, support for the breakup of what is now Pakistan into Balochistan, Pashtunistan, Sindh, at least these provinces. Why is the Taliban so hostile to Pakistan? I mean, Pakistan nurtured it for so long. It's a base for so long. It had, it helped it so much because fundamentally the Pashtuns are a very proud people, and they cannot stand to be lauded over by the Pakistan military. There's nothing to do with the Pashtuns. The control and is frankly with the Potahar section of Punjab. So I think the only way out is for them. Now today, if I'm not mistaken, I read reports that the BLF has declared independence and independent Balochistan. I mean, somebody very soon is going to declare an independent Pashtunistan. We have not encouraged either. Frankly, in my view, the quicker Pakistan has collapsed under the weight of its misdeeds, the better for us. Only one caveat: we need to ensure that our border is foolproof, so there is no infiltration across the border. Because I am very worried what happened, for example, from Myanmar, and what happened from Bangladesh all these decades should not happen in the case of West Pakistan.
Absolutely.
So barring that caveat, broken Pakistan is very much in our interest and will then guarantee peace between the separate elements of Pakistan and
well, at
India.
the moment, that's what it looks like. There is implosion happening. A broken Pakistan perhaps would be the new future of the current Pakistan that we don't know. But implosion is happening for sure, and Pakistan is showing no signs of changing because it continues to provide a safe haven funding as well now to the terrorists, their relatives, and also making it absolutely clear that they are one. This nexus is one. And the Pakistani establishment has made it absolutely clear by participating in the funeral processions, and the fact that the terrorist groups came together, in these rallies and marches supporting the Pakistani army makes it absolutely crystal clear to the world that this is one that we're talking about. This is not like the terrorists are separate, the government is separate, the ISI and the army, they are all part of a bigger nexus. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on the broadcast.